Hello everyone. Today's short speech will be based on the topic a memorable day. Now, before I start delivering the speech, let me make a few things clear about the topic itself. Whenever we hear the topic a memorable day, a lot of us tend to become overly stressed just to figure out which possible memory we should speak of. Now, we need to keep in mind the topic is a memorable day, not the most memorable day. So it honestly doesn't matter if it's really high in our rankings or really low, as long as it is worth remembering, it is worth speaking about. So, with that being said, let us dive into the speech itself. It was somewhere around 2017, and I was in my first year of undergrad. The day was quite gloomy yet cool and pleasant because of the rainy weather. However, the starting of the day did not start with a downpour of extreme level. Regardless, I was quite jubilant because of the fact that I was on my way to meet a few old friends of mine whom I hadn't spoken to or met with in a long, long time. So, despite the dark and ominous weather, I was quite happy. So, like every regular day, I put on my clothes and headed out to the meeting point, which was in GC. Now, back in 2017, I was residing somewhere outside the city. The place could be referred to as somewhere close to Bhattiyari. In the accurate name would be Solimpur. Now, because my residence was outside the city, that is outside the boundaries of city gate, no CNGs were allowed to cross city gate, and because of that, every single individual residing outside the boundaries of city gate, that is those other than the car owners or private vehicle owners, would travel through public transportations, notably public buses and lagunas, and I too was no exception. So, in order to reach the meeting point, I boarded a public transport, that is a local bus. Now, the first few minutes, I guess, or notably the first segment of the journey was quite pleasant because as I mentioned before, the weather was quite cool and pleasant. The temperatures were not annoying. The heat wasn't killing me. And of course, the prospect of reuniting with a few old friends just made everything blissful. Upon boarding the bus, I found an empty seat. And like any normal person, I immediately grabbed that seat and opened the window and enjoyed the view. This blissful state sadly didn't last long, for the person who sat beside me, who after just a few minutes left when his stop came forth, and the seat beside me was filled in by a gigantic person. Now, I say gigantic with every bit of respect for that person, but to be realistic, that person was so gigantic that I could not sit properly. So, in order to fit in and feel a bit comfortable, I decided to put my left hand just a bit outside the window, not too much, just a little bit. Sadly, that particular action of mine would prove to be nothing more than a gigantic fiasco for me. And that fiasco was just a few minutes away. Now, keep in mind that in Bangladesh, despite public transportations being numerous or being high in number, the race against time or the tendency to compete with each other is something that is quite prevalent even now. So, the bus that I was in after crossing Citygate began speeding quite vehemently, and that speed was matched by another local bus. And guess what happened a while later? That local bus that began speeding with the bus I was in crashed into mine. Not only did it crash into mine, it nearly disintegrated my left arm, notably this particular segment, that is the tricep region. Initially, I was so shocked that I didn't even notice the immense damage that my arm had acquired. It began bleeding profusely, and everyone present there began scolding the driver as well as the driver of the other bus. A huge mess was made, but I didn't feel a great deal of pain. And I honestly am still not sure why I didn't feel a lot of pain back then. Regardless, after I got off the bus, I went to a pharmacy and bought a painkiller because, face it, despite not feeling pain initially, I began feeling pain a while later. Once I reached the meeting point, I greeted my friends, we started hanging out, talking to each other. We had a great time. But a while later, my pain began rising at an alarming rate. It was as if a roller coaster began descending out of the blue and started speeding with all its might, in a manner similar to a hammer literally disintegrating a nail millions of miles beneath the ground. Now, keep in mind that although the initial pain and the pain that I felt afterwards began rising, I still had not realized the full extent. It was only after I had reached home that I fully saw the extent of the damage. My entire tricep was not only bleeding and reddish, it was blackened, as if something got flattened and all the juice was extracted in a rather forceful manner. And before I could say anything, my mother's extremely shocked or scared reaction blew me away even further, because it was she who initially noticed the immense damage that happened on my arm. To my surprise, only after she grabbed my arm to see the condition did I truly feel the pain. The moment she grabbed my tricep properly, just to see if there was any severe damage or any bones broken, I felt an excruciating level of pain. It was a pain that I had never ever felt. And that pain would last for around 2 weeks. And the pain was so annoying that I couldn't even pray properly. Because as you know, when Muslims pray, there is a segment of the prayer that where we have to bow down completely on the ground facing the Qibla, and that requires both hands properly. And I couldn't exert pressure with my left arm because of the intense pain. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There were plenty of other inconveniences that I faced. But despite all that, the most intriguing part of all the things that happened, centering the damage that I acquired, my bones weren't broken, and I was able to heal surprisingly well. Any other individual in my situation would generally end up having a bone broken, arm ripped off, blood vessels torn, and God knows what other possible disaster. But somehow, by the immense grace and mercy of the Almighty, I survived. And that day is something that I will remember until the day I die. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for listening.